Welcome, everybody, to the fourth installment of our Managing Farm Risk webinar series. Today, we're focused on social media. We're so glad that you can be here and join us. I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. So, Maria, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Marshall. I'm a professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics.
Perfect. Jenna?
Hi, I'm Jenna Neese. I'm an A&R educator in Putnam County.
Perfect. Ariana?
Hi, my name is Ariana Torres. I'm an associate professor in the departments of horticulture and agricultural economics.
Perfect. And my name is Renee Wyatt. I'm a family business management specialist in the Department of Agricultural Economics. So all of the work that you see in this webinar series is based on a grant that our team received from the NCERME. So we want to give them a shout out and thank them for that funding. Another component of the grant is we have an online course, and it's called the 6 Pillars of Farm Risk Management. Basically, we take you through the 6 topics that these webinars give you a sample of. It's pretty interactive. At the end, you do a checklist to manage your farm's risk in each of the 6 pillars. And then if you complete the entire course, you can earn a Purdue certificate. You can see the link on the screen to register if you are interested. So to kick us off, I think Ariana is going to take us through social media auditing.
Yes, I hope the start of the social media doesn't scare you a little bit. Social media marketing can be a little bit overwhelming, and that's one of the reasons why I believe that doing an audit of any social media platform that you may be using, but within every platform, it's going to be important. So what is a social media audit? It's basically compiling information about all your social media accounts in one single space. Ideally, it's a worksheet or any piece of paper that you want to have that recorded, because you're going to go back to it within maybe a year or maybe monthly. It depends on your time and effort and who's doing the social media. But I think the most important thing is that this is going to provide you like a very clear picture of what are you doing, who has the ownership. And I think that's one of the main components of facing risk and managing risk is understanding who has the passwords and who gets to publish what. And then what they're published, how is that performing in the social media world? And then ideally, after that, you compile the information, you're gonna understand what is the strategy that actually worked within that period of time, and what are the things that you probably have to change. And everything is gonna be in one piece of paper or a worksheet or a board or a napkin, if you may. So to audit your social media accounts, I'm gonna introduce you to 4 steps. So the first one is to create a sheet. I'm gonna give you some templates, but of course you can manage them and change things however you want. There is a lot of information that you can collect, but you can also collect the most important information that you may want. You want to check if your profiles are on brand, and that means basically, is every profile consistent across every platform? Is what you're saying, your address, your username or handle, is your mission and vision, phone numbers, everything, is it the same across all platforms? Because what you want is to have consistency. That's another component of managing risk. You don't want to portray yourself in 2 different platforms, let's say Instagram and Facebook. You don't want to have different profile photos, different handles or usernames, because you're gonna make your customers wonder, is this even the same company? The number 3 is you want to centralize ownership of your passwords. And for that, I'm gonna give you a couple of tips of how to do that. And the 4th is to set up a monitoring program. So this is an example of an audit sheet. Of course, you can add columns, delete columns, however you want. Ideally, you're gonna have 1 sheet per platform. So for example, let's pretend this is an Instagram account and the handle is a username, and that's the name right after the @ symbol. So for example, for my extension program, it's HortBest Purdue. So my handle is @HortBest Purdue. You want to have the same across all platforms. You want to talk about also who is the owner. And by owner means who has access to those passwords. And even if you're giving or granting permissions to several individuals, if who gets to publish what, who has access to what. And you're gonna have their names, their email addresses, and any information that you want to keep in tab. You want to check if it's verified or not. This is a very optional column. For some social media platforms, you can verify that your business is the same address and same phone numbers. You may want to add your mission statement, and this is, although this may be optional, I actually think this is very important because it's going to tell your customers right on the first part of their, let's say, Instagram and Facebook page, what are you in for? What are you doing, what you're doing, and what is your passion? Ideally, you're going to have, again, the same mission and or vision across all platforms. And then your KPIs are your key performance indicators. And these may be, it's going to depend on what part of your social media life you are. What are your goals and strategies? So for example, for some businesses, likes are a key performance indicators. Number of likes, number of comments, number of shares. For some others, if you're doing some sort of e-commerce, KPIs may also be the amount of money you spend per click. So pay per click, or how much money are you getting back per every dollar that you have to spend on posting or advertising on social media. The next column is talking about the top content. So what are the most important types of posts that have been successful? And those are things that you are going to obtain when you're going to, let's say, on Facebook. Facebook has Facebook Insights, same for Instagram, same for Twitter, Google, etc. But there's also another thing that you can use are these softwares or websites that can allow you to compile all your social media platforms in one single page. Some of them are paid. So for example, Hootsuite, or you have Buffer or Sprout Social. Some of them are for free, or there's a free trial or a limited trial. So whatever you want to use, you should be able to understand what are the posts that are the most successful with customers, because that's the thing that you want to repeat over and over, because that's what works. Your most recent post is a very optional column, because of course it depends on the time, right? If you're doing this audit every year, the most recent post is not going to be as relevant. But if you're using it on a monthly basis, which some businesses do, then you want to understand what is the most recent post that you've had, so you understand how each owner of your social media accounts or how each manager is performing. And then any note that you may want to consider. This is another example. Again, you can also add hashtags. So for example, for Instagram, hashtags are very important, also for Twitter, and sometimes for Facebook, I would say. But hashtags are pretty much any word or combination of words that you use after the hashtag. And why is it important? It's because you should have at least one hashtag with the name of your business. You can also have hashtags that are related to the type of business or the type of industry that you're in. So for example, if you're doing local foods, hashtag local foods or hashtag Indiana Farmers Market. Whatever you're using, those hashtags are gonna allow you to not only appeal more to consumers, but also understand who is using those hashtags as well, right? Because if you're going to search those hashtags on any social media platform, you can understand if you're selling majority online, you can understand who are the customers that are using your hashtags. And therefore you can understand who are the customers that are actually potential target customers for your business. The URL, you can also click, insert the link in the profile and the same notes that I already told you before. So this is an example for just Instagram, the Instagram platform. But again, you can use it for any other platform as well. So how do you feel it? Ideally, you're gonna Google your company's name and the name of your product. So if you have any product that, let's say Heirloom tomatoes, you're gonna Google it and you're gonna understand what are the social media accounts. So try to do like a competitor assessment. Also try to understand, is there any business that looks or has a similar name as mine? Because what you want to understand is what are they using in terms of hashtags. So branding hashtags, remember I told you the hashtag, at least one of them should have the name of your business, but also all the brands or all the products that your business does. and what are the things that are maybe going viral, or what are the hashtags that are trending across among your customers and competitors. So this is like a very nice and simple way to do a competitor assessment. You want to understand, is my language consistent? Am I including the same phone numbers, same address? We know that for your social media, personal social media, you don't want to have your address. But if you're using your business social media accounts, you should have your address to understand and to tell customers, hey, this is where I operate. I'm a real business and this is my address. And they should be the same across all platforms. And then there may be the possibility that there are accounts that have the same name as yours. So you want to understand what are the differences and how, if they're using your name, are they actually a real business? If they're not, you can ask them to you can ask the organization or the platform to shut them down. And then identify what networks you may be missing, because if you did a Google search, you're able to understand all across all networks, what are your competitors doing in terms of your industry? So TikTok may be something that some businesses are using right now for videos. And the good thing is that you can integrate TikTok with other social media platforms. For example, some other businesses are using Nextdoor, which is a community-based platform. Pinterest, YouTube, the same Google you can be using if you want to appear in the search. So the second step was, are your profiles on brands? So you need to look into each social media account individually. I told you about the handle. The profile photos should be the same, and the profile photos ideally do not change in account and remain almost permanent. What I'm trying to say is, when you have a profile photo, that's your brand. And you want to have not only the same photo across all platforms, but you also want to have it quasi-permanent. So customers are gonna identify you because that's either your logo or your family photo, if you're thinking that you wanna include your family as a family business, or you may wanna have a photo of your farm. Whatever it is, you don't wanna change it often, because that is what is gonna build your brand. However, your cover photos, you should change them as soon as you want them, actually. But again, change them across all platforms. You can change cover photos to portray what are you doing, your next product, your event, or something that it actually conveys a passion that you put on your business. You should have your bio on check, meaning that what are you doing? And your bio may be your mission and your vision, or it may be what are you doing and what type of business you're at, your address. I told you about your hashtags. What are the URLs that you may want to include? So for example, if you're going to Instagram, it's very common for businesses to include an URL, so which is basically, a link to your business or any link that you want to share. For example, if you're creating an event on Facebook, you can add that link to that event on your Instagram bio. Then you can have your pinned posts, so you can pin the post that you want to always be on top of your newsfeed, and then your stories collection. You want to centralize the ownership of the password. It is okay that your social media accounts can be owned by only one person, but you can also share that with a team or somebody within your company. So for example, if you're a family business and you have kids or your wife or your husband or any part of your family member who is also going to post, you want to make sure that you know who has a password, because it is very common that you forget. So on that social media audit, you're gonna have each name and what is the type of access do they have and what access should they have. If they're not allowed to post certain kinds of photos, or they're allowed to post only certain kinds of photos or certain kind of information, that's something that you need to disclose on that audit. So you know what permissions each individual has. And everybody should have access to making sure that your brand is on point, that there's an update. And also that individual or a group of individuals should have an understanding, what are your KPIs? What are your goals on social media? Are you looking for a number of followers, or are you looking for return on investment for each advertised post? Whatever you are doing for your KPIs, and there's a lot of them, there are actually 19 KPIs that most businesses use. You can pick 1, 2 to 3, and then you should be able to track them every month, every quarter, every year, whatever you prefer. But individuals also should be able to do that. And then again, I told you about the permissions. And the idea is that you don't have to change the password every time someone leaves, because you have that ownership and you can grant permissions. So the last step is to set up a monitoring program. So ideally, let's say you said, okay, I'm gonna do this monitoring or any audit every 6 months. So every 6 months you come back to see how are your KPIs performing and what are the things that you may be missing out here. Quarterly, twice a year, annually, but again, you have to have a period of time that it's pre-established that you're gonna do this. And then you want to compare your work that you're doing day to day to what are the goals that you developed or you set at the beginning. So a lot of businesses may be doing one post per week. You may be one of those that does one post daily. So you need to understand what was your goal to do this. You can schedule them way ahead of time. Monday morning, 6 p.m. with your cup of coffee and schedule all your posts, because there is a way to schedule posts on every social media platform. Or if you can look into the engagement numbers, comments, likes, shares, etc. Those are things that you may be looking to, click-throughs, who is looking at your post, and then try to understand what are the top 3 ways of engagement that you are trying to measure. And then with that, you're saying, well, everything is great, so we're gonna keep doing that because we already know what works. Or you may say, well, I don't think this is working, so we need to change something. We need to include more photos, or we need to do 15-second videos, or we need to do Facebook Live events or stories. Whatever it is that you realize that it's not working, this is an excellent tool to change that.
Thank you so much, Ariana. That was great. So kind of to build off of what Ariana talked about auditing, we're going to go into social media policies. So social media policies, why do you need one? So y'all know that in this digital age, your online identity can be hacked fairly easily, but and also your reputation can get out of hand and not construed the way you want it. And so a social media policy protects both the physical and the digital safety of the family members and employees behind the business. A social media policy can help protect your reputation. It can help you to avoid controversy. It's a great opportunity to align the family's values with its online presence. And it lets employees know what they should or should not do on social media channels. So online reputation. I think we all have an example in our head or have seen something where someone's post online has gone viral and it's spread all across the nation even, and maybe that business doesn't portray what they want to portray through the post that they posted. And so your family businesses or your farm businesses online reputation is a substantial asset that you have to work to protect. You want to make sure that what others learn about your business online doesn't drive away customers, and above that, you don't want to drive away suppliers or partners either. You should make sure through your social media that it should fairly represent who you are and what you stand for. So again, aligning your values and portraying those through to your customers and other outside people that you work with, making sure that it aligns with how you want to represent your business. So when we think about how to avoid reputational damage, we want to only post positive, honest, and accurate content. We don't want any content that will elicit envy or controversy. And each member who has access to the social media of your business or your farm, they may unintentionally cause negative attention to the family, the farm business, and they might jeopardize an important relationship. So we like to tell people when they have social media that when in doubt, stop posting, talk to somebody about it. Say, I'm trying to post this. How would you take this? How could this cause controversy? If it wouldn't, then you can post it. But we also, we don't want to have that negative content out there. We want to make sure it's positive. A lot of times, what I've seen a lot of online businesses do in social media, if somebody responds to a post and they have a negative something to say about the company, I've seen the company respond quickly, say, I'm so sorry that you had this experience. We're going to reach out to you via your messages. So then they kind of move that conversation private so they can have that talk and work out everything that was wrong with that customer's experience, but do it in a way where it's not blasted out so everybody can see it. But handling those things quickly and making sure to confront anything negative that's on your page is really important. So how can you set a social media policy? So first of all, you need to make sure that it's simple, clear, and accessible, and make sure that you continually update it. So it aligns with that audit that Ariana was talking about. We need to make sure that we're updating it, make sure that people have access, the right people have access to it, and make sure that everyone can understand. So some example policies that you might have is let the subject matter expert respond to negative posts. So if somebody has a negative review, say they bought some of your tomatoes at a farmer's market and they didn't taste the way they thought they would or something, instead of having someone who does the packing of the tomatoes respond to that, maybe you let the person, the actual grower respond to that negative post, say, okay, we're so sorry you had a bad experience. We're sorry that the product did not meet your expectations. And they can maybe tell them a little bit more about that tomato and why it didn't taste like they thought it would, or why, it wasn't in the best shape that they thought it would be, or anything like that. But make sure the people who actually have the expertise about something in the farm or in your business respond to a negative post. I've mentioned it a little bit earlier, but your local post can have national or global consequences. There's actually somebody in our community who posted something about how they were looking for men to do some work for them. They didn't think that ladies could handle the work because it was pretty physically demanding. That business had some real issues really quickly after they posted that, and it went viral. I mean, it was shared thousands of times. So just think before you post, and know that in our global world now, those posts can go viral really quickly. Be conscious when you're mixing your business and personal lives. So if you have Facebook, for example, I know that your business page and your personal page, you can just click through in the click of a button, and you can switch pages. If you have young kids or a toddler, they can quickly post something that you don't want to on your business page. So make sure that you draw those lines. Another example, maybe you have a multi-generational family business or family farm, and one of those members of the farm who helps with social media, maybe they go to college, and maybe they, are a normal college kid and drink some. You don't want them to drunkenly post on your social media account. So make sure that you're really managing who has access and when they post and things like that. And just as a reminder, when in doubt, just don't post it. Talk to somebody else, work it out, maybe rephrase what you had wanted to post, and don't post negative content. We have some social media policy examples here for you to think about, of companies that you've heard of. Best Buy, their policy is protect the brand, protect yourself. Ford Motor Company, be honest about who you are, clarity that your opinions are your own, respect and humility in all communications, good judgment in sharing only public information, including financial data, and awareness that what you say is permanent. So once again, that in the global world that we live in, anything that you put out there on social media, once it's out there, it can be accessed and it never really goes away. Intel has 3 rules of engagement. Number 1 is to disclose. Your presence in social media must be transparent. Number 2 is protect. So take extra care to protect both Intel and yourself. And number 3, use common sense. Remember that professional, straightforward, and appropriate communication is best. So this gives you a taste of some different social media policies, and you can pick and choose what parts you think most best fit your business, but you can craft your own social media policy. So what do most social media policies have in common? Number 1, they protect information. Of both the employees, of the family, of the farm, of the business, just protects information. Number 2, transparency and disclosure. So you're transparent about who you are, what your values are, who it is that's posting sometimes. and you can disclose information that way. Number 3, follow the law, of course. Follow a code of conduct. Most social media policies make sure that you're responsible. They focus on being nice, having fun, and connecting. So those are the main focuses of most social media policies. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenna.
Thank you, Renee. So now that we've talked about the different types of social media platforms out there and you've got your policies in place, it's time to actually start using them and developing content and having some goals and objectives and determining if you're reaching them. And so we'll begin that discussion by kind of talking about what your company's goals might be. So we'll move on to the next slide. And, your goals may be that you increase sales, improve customer service, announce new products, and increase product or brand awareness. And depending on what your goals are, you want to make sure that you're reaching that goal while still meeting the needs of your target audience. And you're going to use social media to do this. So let's say that one of your goals is to increase product or brand awareness. So to make that goal into a social media objective, you would say, I want one product promotional post per week for X numbers of weeks. And so once we have that objective, we start to develop a tactic. And we do this by making a calendar or scheduling post in advance that allows us to reach that objective of that promotional product post each week. And so you can do this in a number of ways. And so once you have that objective and we start looking at tactics, we start seeing how can we do this. And you need to think about what different forms of social media content there is. And on our next slide, we'll kind of talk about some of those. And, again, like we talked about with Renee, as you're developing your content, make sure you're following those policies and those guidelines that we've already went ahead, but you can still use some tips to make that content relevant and make sure that it's fun. And so some things to think about is, what are some major social holidays? Let's think about National Pie Day. If you're an orchard grower, a great way to market your product around Pie Day, tell people how to make a pie with your product, especially if it's apple. You can say, let's celebrate National Pie Day with a pie. Here's the pie we create with our product. Need some apples? Come and see us. And so that's an easy way to do it with a social holiday, or you could do it with even a major holiday like Thanksgiving. Make sure you always have some neat graphics to go with your post, if at all possible. And you can use several different online content creation tools to make those posts. There's several out there that are either free or you may have a nominal fee associated with them. And we see them advertised a lot even on TV. So they're pretty easy to find and to get acclimated using them. And then, of course, definitely save your content from year to year, because like we talked about before, you may see some posts that do really well. So you need to remember next year, let's do them at the same time so we can use them again, beef up our promotions. And then work in advance. This is something we all need to remember, that we have slow time. So if we can go ahead and make some posts early on, go ahead and schedule them using the scheduling tools if you can, because I know some social media platforms only let you schedule out so many weeks in advance, but you can still have them made in advance somewhere else and then go in and reschedule them if you need to. And then if you're doing any live events, we do suggest that you kind of have a script worked out in your head, maybe even piece on paper, so that you can have a flow to your dialogue, but realize it's okay to ad-lib some. But if you do have a little bit of a script worked out, it helps make those live events a little bit easier. And then, as we've said before with our policies and procedures and our guides, make sure you're consistent with your branding, make sure you're using consistent language that helps reach that target audience, and make sure everything flows and is on point with your brand. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you schedule things. And so we've got on this next slide a picture of a social media calendar. And so in this case, this is kind of just a general one where we're going to put the date, what time we want our post to appear, what's the topic. So is it related to values? Is it a question that's going to get some interaction? Is it a contest that may allow us to draw in new clients? Is it a live event? And then we actually put the post into the social media calendar and we say, who is the responsible party? So who's going to make that post? Who's in charge of that? I would almost add putting another column with a check that, yes, it was already scheduled. And if you want to go even a step further, another column where you would put what is the reach, or what is something that you're going to use as your measurable, did this post work? But you can kind of see, like, in terms of a value post, we're just kind of introducing our product with a picture, which is our goats. We use their milk to make soap. So we're creating value. We're connecting with our clientele. In terms of a question, this one, what should we call our new product? We're going to make a new type of goat milk soap. What should we call it? So getting some suggestions and getting some interactions with clientele. Contests, that's an easy one to do. We're going to have them do something, and then we're going to put your name in a drawing. Live video means you're going to have a script you develop, but you may ad-lib some, but it's going to be live recorded. So it's not something you can record and schedule, but it still is something you need to have listed and make sure it's on everyone's calendar. And then we've got a discount listed on here as another example. Again, like I said, having a social media calendar, it saves you time and energy because it puts your thoughts down in paper and it allows you to work in advance, so that's easier and you don't have to remember, okay, on the 3rd Thursday of the month, I need to post this post. Now on the 4th Thursday a month, I have this post. I use this all the time. I run trivia on one of the social media pages I organize. And so we have a trivia post that comes out at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. The answer comes out on Thursdays. I'm not a person that's going to be on my computer at 8 a.m. posting that. So every one of those posts I do in advance so that they automatically come up, and it saves me time and energy in the long run. So now we're going to move on and think about, what do you do in terms of utilizing that scheduling feature and making it work for you? Like I said, doing it in advance is great. And so once that social media plan has been implemented, posts are scheduled, make sure to keep those posts engaging. If you've got audience members that are asking questions, remember to respond back. If you've got people liking it, pay attention to that. And so which posts are catching those individuals' eyesights and they're looking at it. If there are certain audiences that need to see your post, be willing to share it into other groups so that they're able to see it. Maybe that some of those questions you get, it may be that you don't know the answer, but you can direct them to a resource that can help them. And then simply thank your audience for interacting and engaging in your posts. But as you're responding back to the audience, like Renee said, use your social media policies, make sure the right person's doing the responding and not someone that doesn't know the correct answer. I know with Purdue Extension, we've got 4 or 5 of us that have access to our social media page. I recently made a post about poison hemlock, and we've gotten a ton of questions and comments. And since I'm the A&R educator, I'm the one that posted it, and I'm the one that needs to be responding to those questions and concerns and everything. Our health and human sciences educator, she's not the one responding to it. She's leaving them for me to deal with because I'm the one best suited to handling that. And so it's really important that we make sure the right person handles each of the questions. Now, what we did do, and our health and human sciences educator helped with, she went through and every person that commented on the post, she invited them to like our page so we could increase our audience size and hopefully get them more engaged with Purdue Extension. So now that we've implemented our plan, it's time to decide, is it working and how good of a job have we done? And so there's a few different ways that we can go about doing this. And so there's some terms to think about. And before we even look at the terms, we want to make sure that you understand that most social media platforms actually capture a lot of data that you can use for yourself. And the key terms that we want to mention are engagement, reach, impressions, conversions, and social proofing. And so engagements are pretty easy. It's those likes, those shares, the followers, the comments. The reach is how many people have viewed your content. Impressions are how many times your post shows up in a feed or timeline and may connect you to your audience. Conversions, it's how many people actually take up the cause and they go buy something. or they interact with you. And then the social proofing is people copying others' behavior. So saying, hey, this worked for me, so you need to get this too. So some of the ones at the end are a little bit harder to really quantify, but the engagements and reach and impressions, they're pretty easy for you to acknowledge very quickly. And so once you're able to look at your social media data, you can start, evaluating it. And one of the very first ways we can evaluate it is through awareness. And we'll talk about that on our next slide here, where we're looking at awareness in terms of how you determine if individuals are aware of your brand, your small business or farm, and other products. And this would include brand awareness, if your audience growth rate, your post reach, and your social share of the voice. Post reach is probably one of the easiest ones you can evaluate because it's one you can open up, you can see how far did that post reach. But to take it a step further, you would take the number that it reached divided by your total followers for that page times 100 to get a percent to see how good of a reach you achieve. That's just one easy way to decide what your awareness is of your brand. So that's one example. Another type of method is to look at your engagement, which helps you understand if individuals are liking your posts, sharing them, and overall interacting with what you're putting online. And this can be evaluated by our applause rate, our average engagement rate, amplification rate, and virality rate. When we look at the average engagement rate, that's your total engagement that's calculated in those social media data divided by your number of followers times 100% to get our percentage. And so that's kind of another way that you can analyze your data. The final one that we're going to talk about is our conversion, which looks at if individuals took up the call to action for the post that you mentioned. And so there's several different ways to look at it: the conversion rate, click-through rate, bounce back rate, cost per click, cost per 1,000 impressions. There's several different ones. Some of these do cost, because cost per click tells you right there there's some money that you're going to have to be spending in terms of an ad. But realize that sometimes you can just achieve your goals by just looking at the things that you don't actually have to cost. And so that's why we kind of want to make you aware of one other one in terms of another way of analyzing it. And this one is very simple. And that final area is customer metrics. In our customer metrics, which we're going to show here, it includes that direct feedback that you're going to get from your customers. So our testimonials, our satisfaction score, or net promoter scores. Of course, out of all of these, the easiest one to understand is your customer testimonials, because those are those reviews, the assessments, the comments, the endorsements that you're getting from your customers. So it's getting that feedback on social media platforms and even encouraging them to, maybe join you in a live and talk about their experiences with your brand. Those are some great feedback that you can get, that you can use to determine if social media is actually reaching your audience and maybe utilize it to the best of your ability. Now, we've talked about 4 different types of ways of analyzing your social media and seeing if it's working for you. We don't expect you to do all of them. Pick the ones that you find easiest to understand and the easiest to implement. And so as we move forward, we're going to talk about how to implement social media and how to communicate it. And I'll turn it over to Maria.
Thanks, Jenna. So now we're going to talk about crisis communication plans. So the reason why we're talking about this is because we want to make sure that you have a social media presence to actually deal with anything that goes wrong. We are talking about risks. And so this would be, risk can be internal or external. So some examples of those of why you would need a plan are product recalls. So if you're selling something at a farmer's market or selling it to a grocery store, anything that your business is selling, you may have a recall. And so part of that, you would have to have a communication strategy plan for that. Any employee or customer injuries that would happen, workplace violence or misconduct, you might need a communication plan for, a disaster or a cyber attack. All of these that we have seen in recent times. And the communication plan, we tend to think that it's always external, but a communication plan for a crisis is internal and external, right? So you have internal and external stakeholders. We can go to the next slide. So what happens if you don't have a good communication plan? Well, that can result in decreased sales, decreased customer satisfaction, a damaged reputation, and decreased or damaged employee morale, all of which result in lower financial revenue, right, for you. So all of these affect how your business and how your farm is going to move forward. And so we want to be able to avoid some of these things by having great communication about what is happening, what's going to happen, and having great spokespeople. Next slide. Okay, so some of the things that we want to think about with a communication plan is, what are the risks? So start, right? This is all about contingency planning and thinking about, audits and who's responsible. So what are the risks out there for your farm? Is it a product recall? Is it that somebody's going to be unhappy? Is it a disaster? All of those, and thinking about what the risks and the impacts are going to be. Then we have to think about, so who's responsible for thinking through these risks and communicating about them, right? So we've talked about having who's, the expert respond to negative feedback, all these things. So who's responsible for it? And it might be different based on different disasters. So a natural disaster might have a different group that takes care of the communication versus somebody who's taking care of negative reviews on social media or negative product reviews. So thinking about who would take care of the communication, who's an expert to do that. And we know we're talking about family farms, and it could be that the same person is taking care of all of these things, and that's okay. But then you have to think about all these things. So then who are the stakeholders? Who do you need to communicate with? It's going to be employees, it's going to be customers, it's going to be any business partners, right? Those internal people, the media, and the general public. All of these require slightly different communication plans or ways of communicating, but having, okay, who do we need to communicate with if these things happen? And then thinking about who is the voice of the farm? So who's the person that actually is going to be the face of the farm based and communicate? So internally, you want to have somebody who's empathetic and straightforward and authentic. And that might be the same person who's also the external stakeholder, the external communicator who speaks well, can think critically, can think on their feet when they're asked questions. And so they might be the same person, or they might be two different people. Right? But you want to make sure that the person who is communicating externally can and is able to respond to questions and have this is exactly what we want to happen. And these are the things that we want to have communicated. And then thinking about, so what's the communication channel? So it doesn't do you any good to have a communication plan that you're going to have a phone tree and all the phone trees are the landlines when people are using mobile phones, right? Because you might have a disaster and you don't have lights and you might not have access to a phone. So thinking about what is the actual method or technology that you're going to use to communicate internally in particular. So definitely having that internal communication plan on who's going to be taught, who is going to reach out to all the employees, what are we going to tell them, who's going to communicate to external stakeholders, how is that going to happen, what kind of technology are you going to use? And that's where kind of social media plays a part. So again, it's important to not only communicate externally, but also internally. So you want to make sure that communication is done in real time, particularly internally. What's happening? What is going on? You want to make sure that you've got that internal communication and you think about how you're going to communicate and who needs to have access to the information. Not all employees might need to know everything of what's going on at a particular time, right? Because then they're getting bombarded by too much information. So you want to make sure to know who needs to know what at any given time. And of course, the information should be accessible anywhere that they need to. So mobile, on social media, all of those things. And then make sure that the messages, again, are relevant to the individual. So what you communicate internally about this is what we're going to do would be slightly different than what you're communicating externally. Because the general public doesn't need to know everything that you're doing internally. You want to have this kind of consistent message and these relevant messages for your internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders. So in terms of thinking about pay before the crisis, you want to have that established social media presence, right? So you can't kind of communicate externally, particularly through the marketing channels, if you don't already have an established social media presence established. So during the crisis, you want to make sure that you're monitoring all those social media channels. So whatever channels you have, you're monitoring them. We know, and Renee said, a post can go viral very quickly. So you want to make sure you're monitoring those channels, and that you designate that you're using the designated spokesperson of your farm to actually be responding to those channels. And understand, we know that rumors can go very quickly. So you're responding to this to kind of nip things in the bud. And of course, that you're using positive and honest messaging. So if something is true, you want to make sure this is we're having a problem. And so this is how we're going to do. So there's a great example that a lot of people use in terms of crisis communication of Kentucky Fried Chicken in the UK who ran out of chicken. Right. And so thinking about, they turned it into kind of a humorous situation of like, yeah, we ran out of chicken and, this is what we're doing to make sure to get our chicken back. Right. So those are the things that you want to make sure that you're using this kind of honest, positive messaging to kind of deal with any problems that are going on. It doesn't always, obviously you want to use humor in the best way possible. If you're going to do that, but you want to be honest about the messages that you're using, because it'll come back to bite you if you don't, or you're trying to cover things up. So it's better to be honest and transparent as much as possible. Next. Okay, I will turn it over to Renee to close up the webinar.
Okay, well, thank you to Maria, Ariana, and Jenna for all of that great information. Once again, if you like what you've seen in this webinar series and you want to know more, you want to dive in more to your farm's risk management, be sure to check out our course. It's open in enrollment. You can enroll anytime through the end of the year, and we're hoping to extend that as well. And we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us. And now we're going to leave it up for any questions anyone has. So feel free to put those in the chat. Or you can shout them out. We don't have a huge group today, so go ahead and let us know any questions that you have. Thanks, Leslie. I'll give you guys one more minute. If nobody has any questions, we'll go ahead and end the webinar for today. We hope that you come back and see us next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about marketing risk. So that should be a great series, a great webinar as well.